Today on the show, I am excited to be joined by Dr. Mahesh Chaya, or otherwise known by a stage name, Dr. Magic. He's a close-up magician and a qualified general practitioner working in practices and hospitals across London and the Midlands. Having performed at a number of international destinations, including Spain, Germany, and Kenya, Dr. Chaya's ever-growing popularity has enabled him to attract big-name clients that include Barclays, RBS, BBC, and Joe McCarthy Supercars, just to name a few. Last month, he appeared on the Jeremy Vine show and was interviewed by ITV News to talk about how he's using magic tricks to help people manage their mental health during the coronavirus lockdown. Dr. Magic, welcome to the Maverick on Air.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Coogan.
Fantastic. So, look, I've been fortunate enough to have witnessed some of your acts in two separate occasions, and I must say on both occasions, I've just been left amazed and mesmerized. The first time was at a friend's reception party 3 years ago at the Millennium Hotel in South Kensington, if you remember that one. And of course, we were glad to then have you for my brother's reception party in Holborn last year, which was amazing. I remember the first time that I'd had met you at the Millennium Hotel. I was actually asked by yourself to participate, and it was a trick. I remember. How can I not remember this? It was where you asked me to give you my smartphone, and then you told me to think of a famous person. So I took some time and I thought of David Beckham at the time, and on the last second I thought, you know what, let's make it a little bit more tricky for him. So I thought, okay, Prince Charles. And I have no idea why I thought of Prince Charles. It was just the most random kind of person that came to my mind. And I can't remember kind of the bit in between, but I definitely remember the ending where you gave me my phone back and asked me to open up Safari. And when I opened up Safari on Google Images was Prince Charles. And I was just like, what on earth just happened? And I remember saying to my brother, like, dude, I need a couple of drinks, because like, I was just absolutely just gobsmacked by that. And and since then I've just been a big fan of you. And when my brother had his reception party, and I was so glad that we were able to come along. So and here we are, kind of 3 years later.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought?
I predicted this. So, I can remember the event, your brother's wedding, and then the one you were talking about as well. I can actually remember doing that trick, the one you mentioned on the phone.
Yeah,
I can remember your sort of reaction. But obviously on this podcast, I'm not going to tell you how it's done. So let's try, mate. But
we'll get there eventually, don't worry. So look, why don't, there's so much that I want to cover with you, but why don't we kind of take it back to really where it all began, because you've got quite a kind of a unique story. Tell us where it all started, and how did you first get into magic to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, even I have to think myself, like, where did this all sort of start? Because it's not something like that was like planned, or it's from a really young age. So I was about 6 or 7, around that sort of time. And then what we used to go for these like family holidays to the south of France, because my cousins used to live there. So on these holidays, we used to go in like summer, and I can remember walking down the streets of Nice, and then we'd only go to Nice like one time in the holiday. And each year there would be this magician, like street magician, who would just be performing these like sort of simple card tricks. They'll be performing some, just basic stuff with dice. And I can remember just being fascinated by it. Like, I just used to watch it. My cousin used to just go off going, where's he gone now? He's gone, he's gone, he's watching the magician. And then I'll just stand there for like 20 minutes. And then, I'll just watch it. And I think my dad then saw, actually, this guy is quite, interested in this. So he just offered, he actually bought one of the tricks from this guy. And I can remember what it was. It was like this, it was actually a really good trick. Like, you still do it to this day. I was only like 7 or 8, but it was a card trick where someone chooses a card, and then they put it back in the deck, and then you put the cards in a box, and then the card that they chose will just slowly rise out of the deck. But but I can remember, having that like at the age of 8, and I used to show it to everyone. I used to love it, and I think that's where it kind of just started off. So as other like sort of family members and friends saw that actually Mahesh is into sort of magic, so when it came to like Christmas and birthdays, they used to just buy me like these magic books, like the simple books that you can get from the library. Sort of books are quite complicated when you're like 9 or 10. So I can remember struggling with trying to figure out put your index finger here, put your ring, and I'm like thinking, which one's your index finger and ring finger? So that's where it all sort of started, and I just kept on like going and going at that sort of age, and kept on learning like new tricks. So I learned this one called the 21 card trick. You might have seen it. It's just you ask them to choose a card or think of a card, but then you deal 3 rows of 7 cards. It's like you might have seen it at school, but it's a really simple trick. But that used to be another trick I used to do. So that, from a very young age, that's where I sort of started. And I think the turning point where it kind of went up another level is when I saw David Blaine like perform his like street magic special, and I think that resonates with a lot of other magicians as well, because at that time when I was like say 9 or 10, we talked about like say Paul Daniels. Did you used to watch his shows by any chance on TV?
No. I don't remember. I only remember watching David Blaine.
David Blaine, yeah. So basically, before David Blaine, like magic used to be in a very cabaret sort of style. So what that means is like it was like sort of done on stage, and it was just shown on TV, and it'd be like a big act with like a magician's assistant, and it was just done in that sort of style. And that's how I knew it as a kid, and that's how I would actually perform it. Like just he's like a big fancy presentation. And then when I saw David Blaine, he completely changed that sort of style and made it like really cool and edgy. And it was just, there's hardly any presentation. His presentation was not having a presentation. And it's being really cool and like mysterious about it. And I would see tricks that I could do, but he just did them in a completely different way that made it even more impressive. So I think, it just made me think, oh my God, like that's that trick I do, but he's doing it like this. So it kind of changed my style. And I think a lot of magicians as well, it just made them think, there's another sort of, a newer sort of style. So that was basically the changing point where I sort of developed.
Okay. And you touched upon it earlier in terms of how friends or family members would get you books about magic for Christmas, etc. So in your earlier kind of days as a kid learning magic, was it entirely self-taught, or did you have kind of the crazy uncle or kind of friends or I don't know, people who also guided you, or was it just entirely like just reading a book and trial and error?
It's funny, I mean, it was actually mainly self-taught, but I did have. He's not a crazy uncle. If I call him crazy, if he hears this, he'll come after me. Like no, I had an uncle who used to teach me a few sort of like really simple like he used to show me the one where your thumb comes off, just a few like simple card tricks as well, but very sort of basic things around the sort of age of 8 to 10, but it was mainly just from like watching other magicians at that age, and also just reading and just doing like the sort of things from the box sets or just the books that were given to me. So and I used to just go to like primary school, and I used to just show people on games day. I don't know if you can remember that, when it's like you can wear your own sort of clothes, and you can go there with like any like Monopoly or Cluedo. So I used to just bring my playing cards and then just show tricks.
And is kind of magic, or kind of the art of illusion magic, something that can be entirely self-taught to get to a higher standard, or do you think at some point you need to be taught by someone, kind of like an instructor, or do you think you can reach a very high level just by reading books and watching tutorials and videos, etc.?
It's a good question actually. My view is that you can get to a high level just by learning yourself, but it entirely depends on the person, how they sort of work and how they operate. So like some people learn. I think it's good to have a mixture of two, definitely, but it's not impossible, because I can remember when I was that young, it wasn't really accessible for me to be, you know, when you're like 10 or 11, I can remember looking at magic societies and things, and there wasn't anything in my area. And so I was just relying on books, and I didn't really know any sort of magicians at that time, like professional magicians. It was really hard to get sort of back off. I think you have to go through the yellow pages, and then you'd have to sort of pay, but it wasn't sort of in our budget. So, but I think, you know, I really think that you can learn yourself, but then, you know, it's important to learn and accumulate that sort of knowledge, and then talk to other magicians and sort of, you know, learn on that networking and socializing and that sort of field. Because, you know, even to this day, like when I speak to other magicians, I always pick up like new things, and, you know, problems that you have with certain tricks. They're like, oh, you know, you should do it this way. That would completely solve that. And so, yeah, I think it's, you know, you can do it, but it's a combination.
Yeah. I mean, when was the moment for you where, you know, you realized, hey, I can do this, you know, where it's not a flop, and and people are reacting quite positively? Do you remember that breakthrough moment?
Yeah, actually. So if I'm going to be honest, when I did magic at the age of like so I think I was about 11, 12 when David Blaine's special came out. So that's when I sort of started adapting my tricks. But in my head then, I still thought, like, you know, this would only fool like people my age. Like, you know, this would only work on people who are like also my age. I thought, if I show an adult, they're just going to be like, get this kid away from me. What are you doing? Yeah. Like, but so what actually happened is I went on a trip to Swanage when I was around like 12, 13. And it was a school trip. And I showed my mate on the coach a card trick, and he then basically, you know, reacted, and then everyone in the coach is just like, what's up? You know, what did he do? And he was just telling him, he just did this trick where he put this card together. So then all these people on the sort of coach, you know, all the students were just like, when we get to Swanage, you're showing us some magic. It's like, they didn't have a clue that I did magic. So what ended up happening is the teachers started we're like, you know, we're in the common room where we got to this sort of hostel, and they're like, you know, what's going on here? Why is everyone crowding around Mahesh? And then they're like, oh, he's doing magic. Okay. And I was like thinking, oh God, like now the teachers are watching, like you got a physics teacher here, he's gonna, and I can remember, you know, doing the tricks then, around, you know, that sort of age, and everyone was just shouting and screaming. And it was such a great atmosphere. Like the students and teachers just became one, like everyone was just interacting. And the students then turned to the teachers like, do you know how can you tell me, you know, how he does this? Because I have got no idea. And then the physics teacher just looked at him going, I'm as clueless as you. I have no idea what's going on. And it was just that moment. And then the students were just like, wow, this is crazy. Even the physics teacher doesn't have a clue what's going on. The geography teacher doesn't know this guy must be doing some crazy stuff. And at that moment, I was just like, do you know what, this is quite a special thing. I think I saw at that sort of young age that people, you know, sort of united, and, you know, people come together. There's none of this hierarchy, this sort of, everyone was kind of, you know, had a good evening, and, you know, it was good.
Yeah. I agree. It's kind of it's that common denominator that magic has, which it kind of keeps that sense of wonder in people regardless of the age. You know, I think as kids, you know, we believe in, you know, fairy tales and Santa Claus and whatnot, but as you get older, kind of society programs you to, but, you know, believe that these things, well, they're not real, but I guess as you get older, you tend to lose that sense of wonder. But I think magic is I feel is the last remaining thing that people of all age, like you mentioned, of all race, of all religion, you know, still find fascinating. I want to talk a little bit about kind of from school days, and then going through secondary school, and then going on to pursue a degree in medicine. Were you always kind of practicing magic, keeping kind of your kind of skills on point, or was it something that during your studies of medicine, which I'm sure must have been quite demanding, you kind of put it to one side and then you picked up on it? Or was it always in your life?
It's funny because at that sort of, when I was younger, like secondary school, I just thought, do you know what? My perception then was like, this wasn't a career. I never knew, apart from TV magicians, I never knew anyone who had a career as a magician. So I just thought, okay, this is a hobby. And I actually thought at that age, it's something you grow out of. I just thought, okay, you know, when I'm like 18 and, you know, older, you know, that's it. I'm not going to be doing, you know, magic, because actually around that sort of, before David Blaine, you know, I used to sort of, some people used to like it, but some people used to like take the mick, like, you know, used to almost laugh that I did magic. So it was not seen as it's a very nerdy sort of uncool thing then. Yeah, I always thought, okay, I always assumed that, you know, when I'm like 18, 17, that's it, it will just be gone. So I, you know, sort of always knew I wanted to do medicine around that sort of age as well. Like from a young age, I was always interested in the human body, just that human biology. Used to go to the library and also just like look at it sounds really random, but just look at the skeletal system going, oh my God, that's incredible. But and people, being Asian, people always assume, oh, your parents told you to be a doctor. So but that's not actually the case. I was quite interested. I just didn't know which avenue to sort of go down, but I just heard that a doctor's a good career. So yeah, anyway, when I did my I think when I was actually applying for med school, so I go through phases where I don't do much magic, where it might be like 6 months I just don't do anything, and I'm like focusing on my medical career. So around that sort of time, I thought, actually, you know, I'm applying for med school. This is really important. You know, magic that's it. I'll probably never touch it again. And when I was applying for med school, like I think on my CV, I did write on there, I did magic just to, you know, sound impressive as everyone does. So and I can remember going to this university interview, and they asked me something, and this is my first interview, and I was so nervous. Like I can still remember it to this day. I was so nervous, and they asked me to come in, and it was all completely formal questions, like, okay, why did you want to do medicine? You know, give me an example of why, you know, you'd be a good doctor, etc. And it was so like, you know, interview style, and it was so such a serious atmosphere. So. And then this guy, there's 4 interviews, and one of them said, "Oh, you've written on here you do magic. Like, how is that gonna help you be a doctor? Like, you know?" And he said it, and I was like, "Oh God!" And then I don't know. I just said I don't know where I came up with the idea. I think it might have been my dad, but I just said, "Do you know what? I didn't answer the question. I just said, "Do you know what? I've got some cards on me. Like, do we actually want to see something?" Oh, wow. And I was a bit like, oh, you know, they're going to get really annoyed, saying, "What do you think this is?" Like, you know,
a game.
Show, mate. Like, and then they all looked at each other and said, "Oh, yeah, what? Do you know what? Yeah." And they just sat back and they just completely relaxed. And then I showed them this trick where they sign a card and it changes into another card. And I did a few things, and I can remember the atmosphere completely changed. Like they completely forgot the question they asked me about, you know, how is this going to help? But secondly, they just completely changed, and they were laughing, and they put down their pen and paper, and they were just like, whew, that was really good. And then I could just see it on their face, they were just, you know, they're really happy. And then they actually said to me, they said, "We love that. If you set up a magic society here, we'll let you come in." Like, wow. They just offered, and I was so I just said, "Yeah, I'll set up a society." Because they didn't have one. But I actually didn't end up going to that university in the end. But so it's just like moments like that. The reason I said that story is it's just like moments like that where I think, oh, do you know what? Like, I'm going to grow out magic. I'm not going to do it. You know, it's not that good. You know, and then when these sort of moments happen, and there's quite a few that's happened, it always gets you back into it. So you know, I'm always like, oh my God, like, you know, how you know, just from a deck of cards in an interview, so serious, and it suddenly changed the atmosphere, and then they're like offering me, you know, like a placement, and you just think that is magic in a way, like, you know, how it just happens. So I think, you know, moments like that keep me sort of going.
Okay, cool. Now, a couple of questions on that. You mentioned that you kind of did a card trick in your interview, so I'm guessing you were carrying a deck of cards. Yeah. And so, you know, my brother and I used to watch a lot of David Blaine, and there was one interview where he said wherever he goes, like, he's always carrying a deck of cards. Now, was that the case with yourself, or did you just by chance you were just carrying a deck of cards?
Oh no! So basically, because I wrote on my statement, because I've heard, I think other people who are, you know, so you sort of go, okay, what did they ask you in the interview? What did it? And then someone said they have to show evidence of these like sort of talents, because a lot of people say all these weird and wonderful things. So someone, you know, did like henna artistry, and they said, oh, I had to, you know, I brought in pictures because they actually asked, well, where's the proof of this? So then I thought, okay, let me just bring a deck of cards just in case they say to me, like, can you actually do magic? Are you really a magician? Like, let's see something. So it was just for that. But yeah, aside from that, generally speaking, as a magician, it's always a good idea, like, to always carry something with you, like a deck of cards or something, because as you know, if you say to someone, oh, you're a magician, they're not going to just be like, oh, okay, like sometimes they do, but they're usually going to be like, you're going to show me something, like,
sure. You can't say no, not now. Yeah, it's just not the right time.
People look at you a bit weird when you do pull out. I'm not going to lie, like sometimes, you know, people are laughing, what, you just carry a deck of cards around? I find it a bit, what's going on here? Like, you just carry that? Okay, you're cool, mate, you know. But
the other kind of question I had was, I know you mentioned how doing that single trick, you know, you were essentially able to disarm the interviewers, you know, who were so stern and rigid. And I'm sure, you know, they're not the only ones in your experience where, you know, you may have approached them thinking, oh, they look a little bit kind of aggressive, a little bit, you know, frightening, but right after a trick, you just see a complete different side to them, right?
Yeah.
Does that happen quite often?
So often, like so often, like all pretty much all the time. Like it's that's the beautiful thing about magic, is that you see the real side of people, and you find that everyone's the same. Like everyone's the same. Like, so, you know, sometimes I travel and I show magic abroad. I go to really sort of deprived places, like in some areas in Cuba, for example. I perform there, and people are just laughing, and they're just like, they really love it. And then I come back to England, and I've got like a gig the next day. And then, like, for example, in this case, it was for it was a Barclays event, and we had the CEO of Barclays there. And I can remember, like, you could just tell straight away that this guy was the CEO of Barclays. I don't know what he looked like or anything. I didn't really do much research, but as soon as he walked into the door, you just know, okay, that guy is important. And, you know, I said to him, I'll show you a trick. And he was very sort of reserved, and he was just like, okay, like really sort of awkward about it. And then I showed him like a trick. And then, he completely sort of changed. Like, he just started laughing, and then his whole voice just changed, and he just sort of relaxed. And then he just started talking, going, oh, how long have you been doing magic? And the way he was talking was so different to the way he was talking before. And I found that he just sort of, the barriers had dropped, and he just was his true self, like he would be at home. And that's a good thing about magic, is that you can get that sort of connection.
You know,
and then he just became like, you know, the people in Cuba, like he was just, you know, really friendly, laughing, and it was just the same. And you think, wow, like,
it's very interesting, isn't it, when you think about it? I mean, just it's so powerful but so simple. And I think that's what makes it such a beautiful art. And I think one of the questions that I had was around kind of perfecting the art of magic. And if we take sport, for example, you know, there are certain people who are just genetically gifted. So if you take basketball, you know, regardless of how great of a basketball player you are, you need to have a kind of some height about you, you know, 6 foot plus at least. And, you know, there's certain jobs or there's professions where someone is particularly wired in a certain way that makes them successful in that job. Is being a magician something like that? Or do you think, you know what, no, anyone and everyone can learn it?
I think it's a tough one. I sometimes think, like, you know, can anyone just do this? But I think that it all depends on your sort of, firstly, it's your passion and interest. I mean, there's a saying, I don't know who said it, but I've heard, like, you know, you don't get into magic, magic gets into you. So I can completely, you know, see that. Like, when I was younger, when my cousin seeing that sort of magician in France, like, my other cousins just watch it and just walk off thinking, okay, cool, I've seen it. Whereas I'll just be captivated.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that it's mainly you need that passion with anything. I think you need that passion and interest, because you can't be good at anything if you don't have an interest, if you're not willing to put in the effort. And so I think that's the first thing. And then secondly, like you said, like the basketball players have to be 6'2". With magic, I think anyone, you know, you don't have to have any sort of particular like skill set. Like, for example, I think the good thing about magic is that it's so broad and there's so many different types of tricks you can do, that some people actually are really good at, like, say, they're just naturally gifted. I see them and they're just so good at sleight of hand. Like, and they're so, you know, they're good in that sort of area. And then you get other people who are a bit more quieter, but then they perform like a sort of a quieter sort of magic. Like, so, yeah. I mean, you know, there's a guy called like Shin Lim, you know, he talk much, and then you get Teller, who's Penn and Teller act, and he doesn't really say much. But I think you have to just find out about what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then just sort of make your own acts dependent on that. Once you've got that passion. That's quite
interesting, because I was watching something with Dynamo, and he says something kind of very similar, where he wouldn't advise the next generation magicians to be like him. You know, have your own style, but maybe take inspiration from somebody like him. But just on the topic of kind of Dynamo, and we touched upon David Blaine earlier, you know, how competitive is the field? You know, I'm sure if we take football Premier League, for example, it's such, you know, so hard to break into that kind of top percentile of footballers. And for every, you know, Ronaldo or Messi, there's millions and millions of kind of kids who are very, very good at football that are nowhere near that level or to break into that caliber of players. Now, what's it like in the field of kind of magic, you know, to get to David Blaine, Dynamo's level? You know, what's it like?
To get to, I mean, I can't really talk for my, personal, because I've never sort of obviously got to that sort of level, but it's very competitive in the sense, like, just as a working magician, it's a very competitive sort of market. You've always got to show that you're sort of different and you have your own style, like you mentioned, and like I touched on earlier. It's just about finding what your sort of act is, and you know how it's different from anything else anyone else has seen. And you've got to also, it's just like it's a business at the end of the day as well. Like, so that's the hard bit, is like, you know, sometimes you just want to do your passion, like you just want to do magic, learn new stuff. But then, you know, the business side is actually can be more than half of what you're sort of working on, and that can take a lot of time. And if you're not, you know, business minded to start off with, it can be a bit of a journey in that sense. And you've got to, you know, me personally speaking, I prefer obviously to doing the magic, but the business side I don't really enjoy that much. But it's something you have to start getting good at to sort of get out there and exposure.
Sure.
But to get to like sort of Dynamo, you know, David Blaine, these guys have worked, like, you know, these guys are the cream of the crop. These guys have worked hard. They do some amazing magic. So, you know, I think they're an inspiration to all magicians.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I agree. And you know, if we take the art of magic, if we draw the comparison, some comparison in terms of, let's just take comedy. You know, if a comedian was to go on stage, you know, you often hear some comedians say, "Oh, that was a tough crowd." You know, they just got no reaction. The same jokes said to another crowd, you know, has the whole room in kind of hysteria and laughter. Now, is there can you draw a similar comparison in magic? You know, sometimes you just get tough crowds who you're thinking, why did that go down like a lead balloon? Like, why are they not reacting?
Yeah, absolutely, completely. Like, I've been to like Fringe Festival. I watched some comedy acts, and I feel for them when that, you know, happens, because, you know, to be on stage, and especially comedy, because you haven't, like with magic, you take the focus away from you a little bit, because you've got like cards, or, you know, with this, like with comedy, it's just all on you, like whatever you're saying. So I think like comedy is really difficult. But the thing is, some things with magic are completely out of your control. Like, and just from working at events, doing corporate events, and just performing, you know, for over like 10 years now, you just realize that some of it, you know, you have to think, is it something I did? Is it something? about the trick, but then you realize that you go to some events and some people say that trick you did is insane, show that that was the best trick I've seen, and you go to another event and then you do the same trick and then they're just like, oh, I preferred the other one.
Yeah.
And you like you just think what just when I thought that's my killer trick, like, but it's all these I think you just got to also realize that there's all these variables you just can't
control,
you can't account for. Like just little things like for example, just the timing of an event, like, and what day an event is will make a big difference of how people are. Like, for example, events on a Sunday evening, like where people got work the next day, people just aren't really, you can just tell they're not really present. They're thinking, their mind is elsewhere. I really, just if you perform really early on in the event when people just get there, you get completely different reactions to maybe an hour in when they're a bit more comfortable. Maybe they've had a drink or so. Just like it could just be outside, like the weather, like that makes a huge difference. Like performing in winter,
really?
Like, and it's a cold day. Yeah, you notice, like, if you go to an event and it's cold and people have they're coming to this event and it's been snowing the days before, and they're just, some people just aren't in the mood. Whereas a day like today, like a really sunny day, if you were to perform like a garden party, you'll get like you always get like really good sort of reactions. So I think it's just accepting that. You have to think, is it something that you've done? Could you improve anything? And then also just thinking, do you know what? It could just be outside your sort of, outside your control. And it's just like sort of dealing with it. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And I guess on that note, if we touch upon the technicality of performing an act, what kind of margin for error do you operate with? Does it have to be 100% bang on or the whole thing falls apart, or is there some leeway to slip ups here and there, like you said, external factors that you haven't encountered before?
Yeah, I'm impressed with your questions, by the way. They're awful. It's like you actually, as in like it's like, it's almost like you're a magician yourself. Like, it's like it's really good. Basically, with that's probably the biggest worry. Almost like my doctor world. It's like, if you make an error, like it could have really big consequences. But I think firstly you got to like practice a lot. Like, and secondly you got to think, like, the way I design my tricks is I've always got to think about, like, what if things don't go my way? Like what will happen? And it's almost like you have to learn to be a bit more freestyle.
Sure.
Like, and that's my style of magic, is a bit more freestyle rather than just like, it's like, like just completely fixed. So, and another thing is, like, people with magic, they don't know where it's going. So, it's up to you how you sort of make it. So no one really knows what the end result is.
Yeah.
So, even if sometimes you can mess up and it's blatantly obvious, but then, sometimes you can just sort of mess up, but unless someone else is a magician watching, they wouldn't really know you messed up. And because people don't know where you're going with this, so they don't know, that's a mess up.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense.
But then, sometimes you go to events and, when people are paying you, etc., you do think that you've got to get things right. There's a lot of pressure to like get things right. So it's just like practicing and just being aware, and then just having fun and just being able to like sort of freestyle and sort of deal with that.
Yeah. And a couple of questions on that. How much? You touched upon it, but how much does it really play on your mind that, the possibility that I've got like 30 people around me, and they've invited me to this big party, and I could actually mess up, or does that not even kind of go through your mind when you're performing the act? Or
not when I'm performing, but before, like, it's not like a major focus, because you sort of like, because I perform at events quite often. It's, when you're if you're starting off, then it is a big thing, but I think after a while you get more comfortable with it, and then sometimes with experience you actually have messed up, and then you realize that actually when you messed up, like, it's not actually a big deal as well. Like, it's not as bad as it would seem in your head. Like, it's not like everyone just leaves and goes, "Oh, give me my money back. What is this?" No one sort of just tends to do that. It's just, most, when you practice and you've done things, when you're actually in that moment, you're not thinking of messing up. You're just thinking, I'm enjoying this. I just want to do this magic.
Yeah. Sure.
And I think it's just like being open and joking about it, and because remember, like, magic, I think people also misinterpret like what magic is about as well. So I always in my sort of acts try and get it across indirectly or sometimes directly, where I'm not doing magic to sort of fool people. It's not there to make anyone feel silly or feel fooled, like, oh, I feel like you got me, It's not that. It's magic is about giving people that sort of feeling and experience. It's almost like when you watch a movie, like, you're not thinking, when you watch a James Bond film, you're not thinking, oh, do you know what, I saw that special effect that he did. That's how he jumped from that building to this building. It's just like they just want to sit there, and then they just want to enjoy that sort of you want them to enjoy that sort of experience, like, of what you're sort of doing. So I think, like, when that sort of comes across, it's not really a big deal. So it's handling, like, connecting with your audience and handling it that way.
Yeah, sure. No, that makes sense. And I know right at the beginning of the podcast, you said, there's no chance that I'm going to get any sort of golden nuggets from you in terms of what magic really is and some little inside tricks. But there is one question that I'm hoping you might be able to answer, or you might swear it. So, how much of how much is distraction is used in magic versus the actual kind of act in itself?
Like misdirection?
No, I mean distraction in the sense that in order for a specific act to be successful, you need to be able to distract the audience to some extent to be able to pull it off. If they're 100% kind of focused and zoomed in to what you're doing, there might be a slight chance that somebody might catch you out. And so is there a tendency that they need to be distracted somehow, either from your verbal, whatever you're saying, or your hand gestures, or just lots of things going around?
I mean, I'll try and answer it the best I can without revealing too much. On the magic circle, like, sending me an email. So with the magic, I mean, it depends on what sort of trick you're doing, but it's essentially, in terms of like misdirection, that is part of it, but it's not like a major sort of part. Again, it depends on what sort of style you're doing. With my style, it's not a major sort of thing. Actually, the way I do it is like, you want people to look as closely as possible, like, at what you're doing, like, because then it would actually have a bigger effect for them. It will produce bigger astonishment. So because I'm aware that actually people will be looking for these things, you're already like second guessing, going, if I'm holding a deck, they're going to be looking at this, they're going to be holding, thinking, what is he doing here? I'm aware of that, but then I use it, you want to use it to your advantage, and sort of say, and when you make the trick still work, it blows their head even more. So I think it can have some other magicians, like pickpocketers and things, they're really good at it, but it's not something that I do like massively focused on. A lot of it is, sometimes it's a bit of psychology is useful. Like, psychology actually is a major part of magic. Like, it's a huge part.
Really?
Like, and when I say psychology to people, they think like the automatic assumption is, so before I go to the venue, you stuck, like, let's say, two of spades, like on a glass window, for example, and then it's like subconsciously implanted in my head, and then that's why. And it's not actually that sort of psychology. Like, it might work, but that's just too like far-fetched. It's sort of like just how people's human behavior is, and then how they think, and then because you're aware of how things go, you can use it to your advantage in some sort of areas to make a trick sort of work. But psychology is a big thing.
Sure.
And it's actually really interesting. Like, they do loads of scientific studies on magic just to find out how human behavior is, because people, when they're watching magic, they miss so many things, and it's just because they're so engrossed. And when you do magic, you then realize that everyone has the same behavior. Like, maybe 1 out of 1,000 will be different, but everyone's sort of looking at the same place, watching the same place, assuming the same things. And sometimes at the end of the trick, people think that you've done a complete, like, when I've asked them what have I done, and they've seen a completely different trick to what I think they've seen. Really? It's quite interesting. Like, they'll tell a friend, they'll be like, oh, he put this playing card just it appeared in my wallet. And you're thinking, that would be an amazing trick if if that's what it happened. But they're not drunk. They're just completely. It's interesting sometimes the way they've seen things is different to what you actually anticipated. So it's psychology is a massive thing.
Yeah. All right. And kind of more recently, you've been creating these educational theme lockdown tricks, which has gained a lot of attention on kind of social media. How did that come about?
That was interesting actually, because with the COVID-19 sort of, obviously, but like in about March, I had a patient. So I was working and so I work in like sort of GP surgeries and out of hours, and I think what happened is that I got a phone call saying that one of the patients that I'd seen had COVID-19 confirmed, and at that time the advice around March, the advice for doctors was that you have to self-isolate, you can't work, which has changed now. But so I had to just basically self-isolate in my London flat, and I can remember just thinking, well, what am I going to do? Like, what is there to do? Like, I can't work. So then I started like trying to think of like, I thought I might as well just learn, try and perfect some tricks or do a few things. And I was trying to learn one sort of effect. And I think after that, I was trying to understand COVID-19 myself. So I read on the WHO website about like COVID-19, and then I don't know, I just had this like eureka moment where I just thought, do you know what, like, why don't I just do this card trick, but then start explaining like about COVID-19, because it's so confusing out there. Like all the information at that time, people were like, oh, can it do this? What are the symptoms? And I thought, do you know what, if I just base it on the WHO website, just be really simple, but it'll be entertaining, and it'll also be good because, people will learn it a completely different way. But I sort of trialed this sort of trick, and initially I just thought, oh, it's such a silly idea. Like, what am I doing? I've gone mad in self-isolation. I was actually convinced. I was like, I need to sue people. Like, I'm actually going crazy. I'm starting to make all these ideas which just sound rubbish. And then I also started practicing, and then after like 2 days, it took a long time like to do this trick, but I must have spent about 2 days like trying to practice it. And then after 2 days, I thought, do you know what, I need to give up because this is just going nowhere. But then I thought, oh, I've already spent 2 days on it now. So if I give up now, I've basically wasted 2 days. Like, So then I continued with it. And then, anyway, made this video in the end, and then posted it like on social media and WhatsApp, etc. And feedback was really good. Like people, just loads of people messaging and like sort of commenting and, saying, oh, that's I really enjoyed that video. It's just bright. If they've not learned anything, it's brighten up their day. So I thought, do you know what, like, this is a good idea. And I quite enjoyed the process, actually.
No, it was awesome. I enjoyed it myself. I'd definitely recommend it. And was it on the back of that you was invited to the Jeremy Vine, or did you reach out directly to them? No,
yeah. So I made a few more videos because I quite enjoyed the sort of process. So I made a few more videos and then posted on social media, and then ITV contacted me on like LinkedIn, and then they said, do you want to do an interview? So I did an interview with them, and then what then happened is, so ITV are part of ITN, and they do like Jeremy Vine. So then I got a message just saying, do you want to come on the Jeremy Vine show? So I thought, my initial thing was, this is fake. Yeah. So, I was just like, oh no, surely not. And then I read it and I thought, actually, this is genuine. And then, I was just really, personally myself, I've not watched the show. It's, it comes in the daytime, but I've not watched it, but I've heard of Jeremy Vine. So I was just like, whoa, this is a great opportunity. So they just wanted to like speak to me. Sure. No, it's definitely good exposure, right? Media coverage. You can't say no to something like that. That's it. And they said, when they said to me, oh, this is going to be live, by the way, I was just, and can you do me a trick live? I was just like, oh my God, I've never gone on TV and done a live trick, but they wanted something medical. So I sort of created something for their sort of needs. But it was a really good experience. Like really good experience. Yeah. And I guess without kind of going off on a tangent too much, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was kind of the good work you're doing around raising mental health awareness. As a general practitioner, you must
you must see so many cases of kind of people coming in with kind of mental health issues. And I was doing some research yesterday, and the figures are quite frightening, really. I think in England, approximately 1 in 6 adults experience a common disorder like anxiety or depression in any given week. And kind of in the UK, suicide is the leading cause of death amongst young people aged between 20 and 34, which, you know, it's really quite staggering. And you've been recently doing some fantastic work around raising awareness and the fundraising for that. I guess the question I have is twofold, really. If you can talk a bit about kind of the work you've been doing, and also from the medical side of things, as a GP, you know, why do you think that these numbers are continue to increase year on year?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's really hard to say. I mean, I think, you know, mental health, firstly, it's due to so many things. Like, you know, when your mental health is affected, it's mainly due to different stresses. So, you know, it could be like relationships, it could be work, it could be health problems. And in terms of like why it's going up, like why we're seeing these increased figures in GP, this is my personal sort of feel, but I just think like a lot of it can be due to the sort of lifestyles we're living at the moment. You know, the pace of life, like things have just got, when I speak to people who, say my parents, you know, how work was for them, it was such a slower pace of life. And even they're like, you know, sort of struggling with the sort of pace of life now. Like they didn't have, I think technology, it's a great thing. You know, it's so good, but then just when we use it inappropriately, incorrectly, or we're sort of checking our emails, like we didn't have email systems like back then. So whereas now you can just go online and you can just check your emails at any time before you go to sleep, and you'll have like 20 emails in your inbox. Yeah, it plays on your mind. I just think there's so many different stresses that we may not have had then, but at the same time, you know, we've also had some taken away, and I think that can massively contribute to mental health, you know, problems. And mental health personally is something that's close to my heart because, you know, when I was doing like GP training, you know, and it's a common issue within the GP field that I was experiencing some symptoms of burnout. So, you know, this is partly, you know, mainly due to like sort of lifestyle factors and just not managing, you know, stress in the right way. And I've had to sort of like manage that, you know, using sort of lifestyle techniques, which I've actually outlined in the sort of videos, so such as like, you know, meditating, just changing my relationship with technology. So just like having fixed windows of when I'm using my phone, not having my email, all my email accounts on my phone, having like a phone break on holiday, journaling, eating well, exercising. So, and I found that it's had such a profound effect. This is just me speaking personally, but on my mental health, and it got me, you know, through that and avoided any sort of severe mental health conditions from manifesting. So that's why it's an issue that's close to my heart, because I just, you know, want to sort of share that with other people, and also raise awareness, because I still feel there's a massive stigma associated with mental health. Yeah. So it's just like you're sort of contributing towards that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You go out and, you know, someone might just say, oh, do you know what, my knee hurts, my back hurts, but, you know, you don't really often speak to your friends. Do you know what, I'm feeling quite stressed, I'm feeling quite anxious, I'm feeling quite low today. You know, it's not something that's you really talk about. So it's just like making that a bit more normal, because not talking about it makes the problem worse.
Yeah, no, I agree. Finally, you know, I'm a big fan of your work, Mahesh, so I really can't let you get off this podcast without you sharing something, right? I don't want to put too much pressure, but, you know, I have to see something, man. Is there anything that you can show us?
Yeah, as always, I always carry a deck of cards around, as you know.
Okay.
Let me see. So, all right, what I will do, it's okay to change the camera angle slightly.
Sure.
Go a bit lower. All right. Actually, I just want everyone to know we have not set anything up, correct? So we haven't set anything up. So
yeah.
What I've got here, just going to lower that. So deck of cards.
Yeah.
Fine. What I want you to do is I want you to think of So in the deck, there's 52 cards.
Yep.
Do you want red cards or black cards?
Red.
Red. Out of the red cards, you got hearts or diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
Which one do you prefer?
Hearts.
Hearts. So you said red heart. So now, so imagine you've got the hearts in front of you. You've got 13 of them. You've got anything from ace to king, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're spread in front of you. You're going to focus on just one of those cards, right? Out of the hearts. Just think of it in your mind.
Okay.
Right? And you can change your mind if you wish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yep.
Now, say which one that has got your attention. Which one are you thinking of?
It's King of Hearts.
King of Hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you agree that this card, the King of Hearts, is being generated at complete random, right? Like we said, we haven't set anything up.
No.
You could have thought of any color. You could have said black. You could have said 10 clubs, and then you could have said 3 of clubs, for example. But you said King of Hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is the crazy thing. This deck has been here the whole time, right?
Okay.
There's nothing in my hands. Just want you to confirm that, yeah? Now, I'm going to do this slowly, so I'm just going to bring this down a bit more. In this deck, before I did this, there's one card I turned over as a prediction. So I'm just going to go through them. So you could have thought of any card in here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go through. You see, there's one card. Can you see there's one card that's a space in here?
Yeah.
Again, you can with any card.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3. Boom.
No way. Oh my God. Mate, that's unreal. That's unreal. And for all the viewers out there who are thinking that I was a part of this, I really was not. I'm just gobsmacked. I'm gobsmacked. This is reminding me of like 3 years ago when I first It's crazy. It's crazy, man. And there's not even no bars or pubs open for me to go and have a couple of drinks. But hey,
just to go.
I might have to crack my dad's some of my dad's bottles. But that was awesome.
And that's the great thing about Magic is that people remember that memory for a long time. Like you said, this is 3 years ago, and it's the powerful thing about it is that people have that memory. They remember it.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Anyway, but but look, man, keep doing what you're doing. I'm sure there's big things that are out there. That's going to happen for you. I'm looking forward to supporting you. And hey, look, keep us up to date. Where can our listeners, viewers find you, follow you?
Yeah, sure. I'm on all like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, like at Dr. Magic Magician. So you can see my healthcare. That's like the newest things I'm doing at the moment, that healthcare related videos where I incorporate magic in that. So you can see that on all the social media platforms. So check it out.